what is the main function of the human skeleton? So what does our skeleton do? The options are storage of fat, protection of internal organs, production of blood cells, and digestion. So what does our skeleton do among these? The right answer is option number B, and that is protection of internal organs. Friends, the human skeleton primarily serves to protect internal organs such as the heart, lungs, and brain. Right? Let's move on to the question number 2. How many bones are there in the adult human body? So what are the number of bones present in our body? Your answers are 206, 248, 300, and 180. The right answer is 206. An adult human typically has 206 bones in their body. Let's move on to the question number 3. Which bone is commonly referred as to the funny bone? Which bone is commonly referred is known as funny bone? Your options are femur, radius, ulna, or tibia. The right answer, the funny bone of our human skeleton, is ulna. Friends, the ulna is often called the funny bone because it can cause a tingling sensation when bumped, right? And that's the reason we call this bone as funny bone of human body. Let's move on to the question number 4. The thigh bone is also known as. So what is the other name of thigh bone? Answers are radius, ulna, tibia, or femur. The correct answer is it is known as femur. The thigh bone is the femur, the longest bone in the human body. Let's move on to the question number 5. Which bone makes up the forehead and the roof of the eye sockets? Which bone makes up the forehead and the roof of the eye sockets? Your answers are mandible, occipital bone, frontal bone, and parietal bone. Answer is frontal bone. Friends, the frontal bone forms the forehead and the roof of the eye sockets. Let's move on to the question number 6. Friends, if this video is helping you, then please support us by liking and subscribing our channel. The bones in the fingers and the toes are called. What do we call those bones which are there in our fingers and toes? Your answers are carpals, tarsals, phalanges, or metacarpals. The answer is they are known as phalanges. The bones in the fingers and the toes are known as phalanges. Right? Let's move on to the question number 7. Which bone is commonly referred to as the shin bone? So which bone is known as shin bone? The answer is femur, tibia, fibula, or radius. The answer is tibia. The tibia is often called as the shin bone, and it is the larger of the two lower leg bones. That's the reason we call it as shin bone. Let's move on to the question number 8. The vertebral column is made up of how many vertebrae in adults? Your options are 24, 33, 12, and 5. The right answer is 33. The vertebral column in adults consists of 33 vertebrae including 24 presacral vertebrae, right? Now let's move on to the question number 9. The bone that forms the upper arm is the... So which bone forms the upper arm? That is radius, ulna, humerus, scapula. The answer is humerus. Friends, the humerus or humerus is the bone of the upper arm that is present in our upper arm. The question number 10. Which bone is often called the collar bone? So which bone is known as collar bone? Your options are clavicle, scapula, sternum, radius. The answer is the collar bone is the clavicle. Friends, the clavicle is commonly referred to as the collar bone. Let's move on to the question number 11. Friends, if this video is helping you, then please support us by liking and subscribing our channel. Which part of the skull allows the jaw to move for chewing, talking? So which part of the skull allows the jaw to move for chewing and talking? So answers are occipital bone, parietal bone, mandible, or phrenoid bone. Your answer is mandible. The mandible or jawbone allows for jaw movement during the activities like chewing and talking. Alright. Let's move on to the question number 12. Which bone connects the scapula to the sternum and clavicle? So which bone connects the scapula to the sternum and clavicle? Your options are radius, humerus, ulna, clavicle. Answer is clavicle. The clavicle connects the scapula to the sternum and plays a vital role in shoulder for different kind of movements. Let's move on to the question number 13. Which bone in the human body is responsible for producing red blood cells? So which bone in our body does produce red blood cells? A, B, C. Your answers are femur, humerus, tibia, pelvis. The answer is pelvis. Friends, the pelvis contains the bone marrow responsible for red blood cell production. So the bone that produces red blood cell is pelvis, which contains the bone marrow. Right. Let's move on to the question number 14. What are the small bones in the wrist called? So what do you call those bones which are present in our wrist? Your options are carpals, metacarpals, phalanges, or tarsals. Your answer are carpals. Friend, the small bones in the wrist are known as carpals. Let's move on to the next question. The bone that forms the heel of the foot. So what do we call the bone that forms the heel of our foot? Is that metatarsal, tibia, fibula, or calcaneus? Your answer is calcaneus. Friend, the calcaneus is the bone that forms the heel of our foot. Let's move on to the question number 17. Which bone in the human body is often referred to as the shoulder blade? So which bone in the human body is known as shoulder blade? Your options are humerus, radius, scapula, or clavicle. Right answer is scapula. Friend, the scapula is common known as shoulder blade of a human body. Let's move on to the question number 18th. Which bone allows the head to nod yes and no? So while we tell yes or no, when we nod our head to say yes or no to somebody else, that time, so which bone allows us to do that? The options are atlas, axis, cervical vertebra, or sternum. The right answer, that the bone that allows us to nod our head to say yes or no, is atlas. Friend, the first clavicle vertebra is called the atlas and allows for the nodding movement of our head. Right, let's move on to the question number 19. The bone that separates the nasal cavity from the brain is called as. So which bone separates the nasal cavity from the brain, and what do we call that type of bone? Your answers are maxilla, phrenoid bone, ethmoid bone, or zygomatic bone. Which one? The right answer is, it's ethmoid bone. Friend, the ethmoid bone separates the nasal cavity from the brain. Question number 20. Friends, if this video is helping you, then please support us by liking and subscribing our channel. The bone that forms the bridge of the nose is called. The bone that forms the bridge of the nose is called as. What do you call that bone that forms the bridge of our nose? The answer is nasal bone, vomer, maxilla, zygomatic bone. The right answer is nasal bone. Okay, let's move on to the question number 21. Which bone is commonly called the thigh bone? So which bone is known as thigh bone, and what is the name of that? The answer is radius, ulna, tibia, and femur. The answer is femur. The question number 22. The bone that makes up the upper jaw. So which bone makes up the upper jaw? Answer is maxilla, mandible, vomer, ethmoid, thymoid bone, or the answer is maxilla bone. Friends, the maxilla forms the upper jaw. Let's move on to the question number 23rd, and that is, which bone in the human body is also known as the breastbone? Answer is clavicle, scapula, humerus, or sternum. The right answer is sternum. The sternum is often called as the breastbone. The bone that forms the back of the skull and base of the cranium. What do you call that bone? The bone that forms the back of the skull and the base of the cranium. Your options are parietal bone, occipital bone, frontal bone, and temporal bone. The right answer is occipital bone. The occipital bone forms the back of the skull and the base of the cranium. Let's move on to the question number 25th. Which bone is located in the forearm on the same side as the thumb? So which bone located in the forearm on the same side as the thumb? Your answers are radius, ulna, humerus, capus. Your answer is radius. The radius is located in the forearm on the same side as the thumb. Right, let's move on to the question number 26. The bone that forms the lower jaw is the maxilla, mandible, vomer, or nasal bone. So which bone forms the lower jaw? Your answer is mandible. The mandible is the bone that forms the lower jaw, as you can see in the picture. Let's move on to the question number 27. Which bone is also known as the sit bone? So which bone known as sit bone of a body? Your answer are ilium or ischium, pubis sacrum. Your answers are ischium. Friends, the ischium is sometimes referred to as the sit bone of a body. The question number 28. The bone that connects the sternum and scapula is clavicle, humerus, ulna or radius. The answer is clavicle. The clavicle connects the sternum and scapula. The question number 29. The bone that forms the side of the skull and it is a part of the cheek is, so what do you call that bone that forms the side of the skull and the part of the cheek? Is it temporal bone, occipital bone, parietal bone or zygomatic bone? The right answer is zygomatic bone. The zygomatic bone forms part of the cheek and the side of the skull, like you see in the picture. Let's move on to question number 30. The bone that forms the bridge of the nose and the part of the eye socket. So what do you call the bone that forms the bridge of the nose and the part of the eye socket? Is it called nasal bone, vomer, phrenoid or ethmoid bone? Your correct answer is nasal bone. The nasal bone forms the bridge of the nose and contributes the eye socket. It actually contributes to eye sockets as well. The question number 31. What is the purpose of the axial skeleton? So what is the intention of the axial skeleton that is existed in our body? Your options are to support the appendicular skeleton, or to protect the vital organs, or to provide attachment points for muscles, or aiding in movement. So the right answer is it is existed to protect vital organs like a brain, heart, etc. Let's move on to the question number 32, and that is which bone the bones of the fingers are known as. So what do you call the bones of our fingers? Do we call them as carpals, tarsals, phalanges or metacarpals? The right answer is phalanges. The phalanges are the bone which are present in our fingers, right? Let's move on to the question number 34. The saddle joint in the hand is formed by which two bones? So which are those two bones that form the saddle joint in our hand? Your options are radius and ulna, scaphoid and lunate, radius and carpals, or trapezium and metacarpals. The right answer, the two bones that form a saddle joint in our hand are trapezium and metacarpals. Let's move on to the question number 35. Which bone is responsible for supporting the body's weight when sitting? Which bone helps us to maintain a body weight, to support a body weight while we sit? Your answers are ilium or ilium, ischium, pubis or sacrum. Answer is ischium. Let's move on to the question number 36. The first cervical vertebra is known as, do we call it as the atlas, axis, cervical vertebra or thoracic vertebra? Your options are atlas. The atlas is the first cervical vertebra in our body. Let's move on to the question number 37. The bone that forms the roof and sides of the cranium. What do you call the bone that forms the roof and the side of the cranium? Your options are frontal bone, occipital bone, parietal bone or temporal bone. The right answer is parietal bone. The parietal bone forms the roof and the sides of cranium. Right, let's move on to question number 38. The bones that make up the wrist are known as. So what do you call those bones that make our wrist? The options are carpals, metacarpals, phalanges or tarsals. The right answer that we have seen already in our previous questions, and that is carpals. The wrist bones are called as carpals. Let's move on to the question number 39. Which bone provides attachment for the tongue and throat muscles? So which bone of a body that provides attachment for the tongue and the throat muscles? Options are hyoid bone, mandible, maxilla or temporal bone. The right answer, the bone that provides attachment to our tongue and throat muscles is hyoid bone. Friends, the hyoid bone provides the attachment for the tongue and throat muscles. Right, let's move on to the question number 40. The bone that forms the base of the skull and the houses the inner ear structure. What do you call that bone that forms the base of the skull and houses the inner ear? Your options are temporal bone, occipital bone, parietal bone or frontal bone. The right answer is temporal bone. Friends, the temporal bone forms the base of the skull and houses inner ear structures. Right, let's move on to the question number 41. Friends, if this video is helping you, then please support us by liking and subscribing our channel. Which bone helps to form the nasal septum and nasal cavity? Answers are nasal bone, vomer, maxilla or zygomatic bone. The right answer is vomer. The vomer helps to form the nasal septum and nasal cavity. The question number 42. The bone that forms the hard plate, means the roof of the mouth, is, what do you call that bone that forms the hard plate? That is a roof of the mouth. Is it maxilla, mandible, or vomer, or palatine bone? The right answer is maxilla. The maxilla forms the hard plate, which is the roof of a mouth. You can see in the picture. Okay, let's move on to the question number 43. The bone that forms the wing of the nose. What do you call that bone that forms the wing? Is it nasal bone, vomer, ethmoid bone, or ethmoid bone, or zygomatic bone? The right answer is zygomatic bone. The zygomatic bone forms the wing of the nose. Let's move on to the question number 44. Which bone helps protect the spinal cord and provides attachment for back muscles? So which bone helps protect the spinal cord and provides attachment for the back muscles? Your options are axis or atlas or sacrum or coccyx. The right answer is sacrum. The sacrum helps to protect the spinal cord and provides the attachment for back muscles. Right. Let's move on to the question number 45. The bone that forms the keystone of the cranial floor is. What do you call the bone that forms the keystone of the cranial floor? Your options are occipital bone, parietal bone, frontal bone or phrenoid bone. Your answer is phrenoid bone. The phrenoid bone or keystone of the cranial floor. Let's move on to the question number 46. Which bone articulates with the radius and ulna form the elbow joint? Your options are humerus, clavicle, scapula or sternum. The right answer is humerus, the bone that forms the anterior part of the hip bone. Your answers are, your options are, is it ilium, ischium, pubis or sacrum? The right answer is pubis. The pubis forms the anterior part of the hip bone. Let's move on to the question number 48. Which bone helps to protect the brain and contains the middle and inner ear structures? The answer, your options are temporal bone, occipital bone, parietal bone or chiffonite bone. Answer is temporal bone. The temporal bone helps protect the brain and houses middle and inner ear structures. Let's move on to question number 49. The bone that articulates with the femur to form the hip joint. The bone that articulates with the femur to form the hip joint. What do you call the bone? Is it tibia, fibula, ilium or ischium or the answer is ilium. Ilium of the hip bone articulates with the femur to form the hip joint. Let's move on to the last question of our session. Which bone is commonly called the kneecap? So which bone known as the kneecap of a body? Is it patella, tibia, femur or fibula? The answer is patella. The patella is often referred as the kneecap of our bone system. Friends, if this session helped you, then please support us by subscribing and liking and sharing our channel. So thank you so much for your valuable time. See you with the next video.